The amber liquid swirled in the glass, catching the dim light from the bedside lamp. Ethan Carter lowered the drink, his gaze distant. The words, those invasive lines of text only he could see, had finally faded from the air. But their echo remained. So that was it. A pale moonlight for some destined alpha protagonist. A footnote. He knew about the cameras. He'd known for a year. He knew about the sedatives slipped into his nightly bourbon. He'd known almost from the start. The boy was his boss's son, after all. Some habits were genetic. A faint, bitter smile touched Ethan's lips. He brought the glass to his mouth and drank. The burn was familiar, a false comfort. The house was silent, a sprawling penthouse overlooking the city's glittering skyline. Somewhere in a room down the hall, a 19-year-old named Kaylin was watching a monitor, waiting for the drugs to take effect, waiting for his guardian to fall asleep. Ethan wouldn't sleep. He hadn't truly slept in years. He set the empty glass aside and picked up a novel, its pages crisp and unread. The clock on the wall ticked steadily towards 5 a.m. The text flickered back into his vision, a ghostly overlay on the reality of his silk sheets and expensive furnishings. What's going on with the plot? This is a bug. Ethan, put the damn book down. Kaylin's losing his mind in the next room. Poor Alpha. His last fix was 3 days ago. He just wants to hold him. It's the pre-rut. The kid's desperate. Ethan's knuckles whitened on the book's spine. Just holding. He threw the book aside. The movement pulled the fabric of his robe against his chest, a sharp, familiar sting blooming beneath. He reached for the jar of salve on the nightstand, cool ceramic under his fingers. He shrugged the robe open, the city's lights painting pale streaks across his skin. He squeezed a dollop of cream, the medicinal smell cutting through the scent of expensive linen and old bourbon. The coolness was a relief against the lingering, tender ache. The text exploded, a cascade of bright commentary. Is anyone thinking about Kaylin right now? This view, right into the camera. Kaylin's gonna explode. Ethan's hands stilled. A slow, calculated thought uncoiled in his mind. He adjusted his posture slightly, a subtle shift of angle under the direct light. He took his time, smoothing the cream, his movements languid and deliberate. Then he leaned back, a portrait of weary abandon, and let the book slide from the bed to the floor with a soft thud. He didn't retrieve it. He let it lie there, discarded. The invisible pressure in the room intensified, a static charge of focused longing. The text confirmed it. One ruins a book. The other ruins a screen. You two, damn, that's intense. Kaylin's face is too red. His rut's hitting early. Wait, why is Ethan getting up? What's he doing? What, indeed? Kaylin was 19. All that youthful fire, banked and stifled. It wasn't healthy to let it fester. The hallway was dark and cool. He stood before Kaylin's door, listening to the frantic, muffled sounds from within. A crash, a hissed curse, a desperate scramble for control. He knocked. Silence thick and sudden. Then the door opened a crack. Only Kaylin's eyes were visible, wide and glassy, the color of a stormy sea. Ethan? It's early. I didn't sleep, Ethan corrected, his voice flat. The bourbon isn't working anymore. I need to talk. He didn't wait for a refusal. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was dark, the air thick and cloying with the scent of distressed alpha. Ozone, cedar, and something feverishly sweet. He walked to the bed and sat on the edge, crossing his legs, elbow on his knee, chin resting on his hand. Kaylin remained half-shrouded in shadow near the door, a tense silhouette. Kaylin. The figure in the shadows flinched. I'm a beta, Ethan said softly, a trace of amusement in his tone. I can't smell your condition, but other scents are quite clear. A ragged breath came from the darkness. Ethan, I can explain. Come here. The command hung in the charged air. Kaylin obeyed, moving slowly, awkwardly. one hand gripping the hem of his sweatshirt to hide the obvious evidence of his distress. He was taller than Ethan now, all lean muscle and coiled tension under cheap cotton. His face, usually so composed, was a mask of torment. Flushed skin, a sheen of sweat on his brow, his mouth a tight line. The sight of it, that face so hauntingly similar to another, sent a jolt through Ethan's system. He reached out, grabbed a fistful of Kalen's shirt, and yanked. The boy stumbled forward, falling onto the bed. Ethan moved with him, straddling his hips, leaning down. His thumb traced a path from the heated corner of Kalen's eye to the burning shell of his ear. Pre-rut, Ethan murmured, his breath ghosting over Kalen's skin. Need some help? Beneath him, Kalen's body turned to iron, heat radiating through the layers of fabric. His eyes were huge, swirling with desire and utter disbelief. What did you say? The face beneath him blurred for a second, overlaying with a memory, older, colder, but with the same bone structure. A fierce, dark thrill shot through Ethan's veins. He bent lower, pressing soft, teasing kisses to Kalen's forehead, the corner of his mouth, the frantic pulse in his throat. I said, he whispered against the boy's skin, let me help you. A growl, low and visceral. Then the world spun. Ethan found himself on his back, Kalen looming over him, hands gripping his shoulders hard enough to bruise. The alpha's eyes were wild, conflicted. Ethan, he ground out, voice raw. You'd take anyone, wouldn't you? Even me. He wasn't wrong. Ethan had a reputation. He was the beta who ran the Northern District with cold efficiency, who slept with alphas because he could, because they wanted him despite what he was, or perhaps because of it. He was a vice, a dirty secret, a whisper in the ranks of the organization. Kalen's father, Silas Vance, had been the first. Silas, 7 years older, who'd pulled a 16-year-old street kid into his world. Silas, who'd called him Ethan normally, Eth when he was pleased. Silas, who'd been dosed with a potent cocktail by a rival at 25 and had, out of all possible solutions, coaxed the 18-year-old Ethan into his bed. The rain had hammered against the windows that night, and Silas's voice had been a constant, possessive murmur in the dark. After that, it became another duty, another way to serve. He didn't have a name for it until 2 years later, when Silas, his position secure, was presented with a 9-year-old son from a past fling, a male Omega. Kalen, a genetic rarity, a top-tier alpha. Ethan, Silas had said, his tone final. Kalen is the future. The Omega needs legitimacy. You'll always be my second. You know how this works. Betas don't bond. We had an understanding, a transaction. He'd accepted it. He'd always listened to Silas. Silas got his heir. The Omega got his title. And both were too busy, one with building an empire, the other with spending its proceeds to raise the boy. So Kalen was passed to Ethan. He provided shelter, education, food, not affection. Never that. Until a year ago, the clumsy attempt at drugging his drink. The anxious, fumbling kiss that followed. The whispered, desperate confessions against his lips. Ethan, I love you. Please just look at me. Don't let anyone else touch you. The next morning, staring at his reflection, at the faint split in his own lip, Ethan had started to laugh. A low, broken sound that shook his frame until it hurt. A debt paid by the sun. Did Silas ever imagine this particular consequence when he dumped the child on him? What's wrong? Ethan asked now, his hand coming up to cradle Kalen's jaw, his thumb pressing into the soft skin under his chin. Do I seem old to you? No. The denial was instant, reflexive. Then, quieter, laced with confusion and hurt. Why are you doing this? Why now? The text scrolled. An unwanted audience. Yeah, why is Ethan being so forward? This isn't in the plot. The main character and this side piece aren't supposed to go all the way. He's just the alpha's teenage fantasy. The real love interest is the Omega with the 99% compatibility. Can't wait for that meet cute. Ethan's fingers curled into the sheets. Omega. Another Omega. With a surge of strength born of sheer resentment, he flipped them again, pinning Kaylin beneath him. He looked down at the face so young, so full of want. Wasn't it you who crossed the line first? Weren't those your promises? He leaned down and crushed his mouth against Kaylin's. It wasn't a kiss. It was a claiming, a punishment. Teeth clashed. The coppery taste of blood bloomed between them. When he pulled back, Kaylin was trembling, his eyes glazed, lips swollen and stained. Shut up, Ethan breathed, and then he slapped him. Not hard, just enough to sting, to focus. You said I'd take anyone. He shifted his hips, a deliberate, taunting motion. You're grown. Let's see what you're worth. He tangled a hand in Kaylin's dark hair, forcing his head back. Look at me. Remember who your first is. Ethan, Kaylin's voice was wrecked. His control shattered. He surged up, reversing their positions once more, his mouth desperate, his hands fumbling with the tie of Ethan's robe. God, you're so... The phone on the nightstand rang, the screen lighting up with a single name. Silas. Ethan reached for it, but Kaylin, a wild, possessive noise tearing from his throat, caught his wrist and bit down on the heel of his hand. The sharp pain drew a muffled gasp from Ethan. The ringing stopped, a beat of dead air on the line. Then Silas's voice, cold and clipped. My office. Now. The dial tone hummed. Ethan looked at the desperate young man above him, at the frantic, unfinished need. He offered a thin, detached smile. There are suppressants in my bathroom. Handle it. He pushed himself up and walked out. At roughly 5 meters from Kaylin's room, the ghostly text in his vision dissolved into nothing. The headquarters was all steel and glass, a monument to Silas Vance's power. Ethan entered the office without knocking. Silas was seated behind a vast, empty desk, a file folder closed before him. He didn't look up. Northside, Silas said, his voice echoing in the sterile space. The Crescents are pushing tainted product through our channels. Using our colors. They've set another exchange. This weekend. Ethan understood. The Northside was his territory. He walked forward, leaning over to pick up the file. His robe gaped slightly, revealing a constellation of fresh marks on his collarbone. Silas's head snapped up. His nostrils flared. In one fluid, violent motion, he was out of his chair, his hand closing around Ethan's throat, driving him back until his shoulders hit the cold glass wall. You've been with someone. The statement was icy. Ethan managed a strained laugh. And if I have? Silas's grip tightened. He leaned in, inhaling sharply near Ethan's neck. His expression darkened into something truly dangerous. Sandalwood. Cedar. Ethan, he hissed, the name a condemnation. You've gone too far this time. Ethan went still. Kaylin. In his rut-driven state, he must have left traces of his scent all over him. A claiming mark of a different kind. Silas released his throat only to spin him around and shove him face first into the deep leather couch. A large, calloused hand pinned the back of his neck. You're trying to punish me, Silas stated, the words flat and sure. Ethan laughed again, the sound muffled by the cushions. You're flattering yourself, boss. The hand on his neck tightened. How far did it go? Ethan stayed silent, struggling weakly against the weight holding him down. I see. The weight lifted slightly. Silas's voice was deceptively calm now. My call interrupted you. He stepped back, straightening his cuffs. Ethan, you've made yourself common. What you do with your time is your concern. But Kaylin is not part of your diversions. Ethan pushed himself up, his fingers digging into the soft leather until his joints ached. His voice came out hoarse. You always were arrogant. You think taste isn't Harari? Ask your precious top-tier alpha who started this. He knows. Ethan. Silas's voice cut through the room. a whip crack of authority. Silence fell heavy and suffocating. When he spoke again, his face was its usual impassive mask, but a vein throbbed faintly at his temple. Young people experiment. They chase novelty. It means nothing. You, of all people, should understand that. Ethan's hands went slack, all the fight draining out of him. The numbness was immediate and total. But it's different. Kalen is different. He left the office without another word. He was vaguely aware of the odd looks from the Alpha enforcers in the hall, some wrinkling their noses as he passed, but he paid no attention. Back at the penthouse, Kalen was asleep in Ethan's bed, curled around Ethan's pillow, his face still flushed. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed and reached out to brush a strand of hair from his forehead. Kalen's eyes flew open. He blinked, focus returning, and then his expression crumpled into something wounded and angry. "Where were you?" The question was a rough accusation. Ethan smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "You heard the call." Kalen's face paled. "Did you too? What did you do?" "We discussed business. Nothing more." Ethan tilted his head, leaning closer. "What about you? You look awful. Didn't use the suppressants?" His voice dropped to a teasing murmur. "Were you waiting for me? Did you want to finish what He was shoved back hard." Kalen scrambled to his feet, his eyes blazing with a hurt so profound it was startling. "Ethan," he choked out. "What am I to you? Am I just another one?" The words died in Ethan's throat. He could only stare. The text flickered, a cruel footnote. Kalen actually said no? Interesting. He used the suppressants. He's clear-headed now. Of course, he's not going to roll around with a side character. He's the main lead after all. Ethan watched, numb, as Kalen turned and stalked out of the room, slamming the door behind him. He looked at the empty space where the boy had been. The kid was grown. He was becoming difficult to manage. Days passed. In his office at the Northside Operations Center, Ethan had his boots up on the desk, eyes closed. The door burst open. "Ethan." The crew's in position on Northside. Leo, his head of security, stood there, a mountain of muscle stuffed into a too-tight Henley. He'd been with Ethan since the beginning, a loyal, blunt instrument. Knocking Leo as a concept. Leo just grinned, unrepentant. Next time, Ethan swung his legs down and stood. As he moved to pass, Leo caught his wrist. The big man's brow furrowed. He leaned in, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Ethan, there's talk. Ugly talk. They're saying you and Silas, that you're back at it. After everything. Is it true?" Ethan froze. The rumor, of course. He'd left Silas's office disheveled, reeking of conflict and another Alpha's scent. Leo knew the old history. He was one of the few who did. When Ethan didn't answer immediately, Leo grew more agitated, crowding him back against the desk. "Tell me, you're not going back there, are you?" Before Ethan could respond, a voice, cold and furious, cut through the room. "What is this?" Kalen stood in the doorway. Ethan smoothly extracted himself from Leo's concerned grip. "Leo, give us a minute." Once they were alone, Ethan leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Finished sulking? Kalen looked young and out of place in the tactical office, yet his presence filled it. He shifted awkwardly.
"I'm hungry."
"I made reservations. Come with me." "Can't." Ethan's smile was thin. He reached out, winding a strand of Kalen's dark hair around his finger. "I've got business. Taking Leo to handle the Northside situation." "Northside?" Kalen's eyes lit up. "Take me. I can help. I'm better than Leo." Ethan started to refuse, but the text shimmered into view, an unwelcome prophecy. "Take him. Take him. He needs to go." That's where he meets the Omega who works at the jazz club. The plot begins. The real story starts. Ethan's hand fell away from Kalen's hair. "No, It's not safe. Not safe. Kaylin's voice rose. Ethan, I'm not 9.
I'm 19.
I have every right to be at your side. I can protect myself. I can protect you. Ethan studied him, the fervent promise hanging in the air. Promises were light. Words were cheap. If he let Kaylin go tonight, he wouldn't be standing at Ethan's side for long. He'd be pulled into a different orbit, just like his father. Ethan took a step back, then another. He offered a hollow smile. I know. He saw the hope spark in Kaylin's eyes. Then, in one swift motion, Ethan stepped into the hall and pulled the office door shut. The lock engaged with a solid click. A baffled pounding started immediately. Ethan, what are you doing? Open the door. Wait for me, Ethan called through the metal. Just be good and wait. The jazz club on Northside was all low lights and smoky air. Ethan wiped a streak of blood from his cheekbone with the back of his hand. It was over quickly, efficiently. The Crescent operatives were now cuffed and being led out through the back. Leo clapped him on the shoulder, his face split in a grin. All clean, Ethan.
No stragglers.
Ethan gave a curt nod, holstering his weapon. He turned to leave, Leo falling into step beside him. His voice a persistent, worried buzz in Ethan's ear. You're sure, right? About Silas. You weren't lying to me. The text appeared, the letters seeming to bleed into the smoky air. Finally, the good part. Kaylin was clever. Picked the lock, followed anyway. Just ran into Leo at the club entrance. 99% compatibility. Like a magnet. This is going to be intense. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He moved without thought, shoving past Leo, his boots pounding on the scarred wooden floor. He found the door to the VIP lounge and kicked it in. The scene inside was a brutal cliché. A slight, trembling Omega was pinned face down on a velvet couch, his shirt ripped, his neck and shoulder a mess of angry bites. Over him, eyes completely glazed, scent raging out of control, was Kaylin. He was lowering his head again, drawn irresistibly to the Omega's exposed gland. Ethan didn't hesitate. He raised his gun and fired. The bullet buried itself in the plaster wall an inch from Kaylin's head. The report was deafening in the enclosed space. Ethan. Leo shouted from the doorway, his gaze darting from the embedded bullet to Ethan's face. He saw it then, the flash of raw, possessive fury in Ethan's eyes, quickly shuttered behind a wall of cold, dead calm. Kaylin stumbled back, blinking as if waking from a dream. He saw Ethan and a broken sound escaped him. He staggered forward, collapsing against Ethan, his hands clutching, his face burying in Ethan's neck. He was burning up. Ethan.
I'm sorry.
Couldn't. It hurt. The words were slurred, drenched in misery and primal need. Ethan stood rigid, one hand still clenched white-knuckled around the gun. With the other, he mechanically pushed Kaylin away. The boy slumped to the floor, whimpering. Leo looked from Kaylin to Ethan, his expression shifting through confusion to a dawning, complicated understanding. Get some betas in here, Ethan ordered, his voice stripped of all emotion. Give them both suppressants. Take the Omega to a private clinic. He paused, the next words ash in his mouth. Have the temporary mark removed. Pay him off. Have him relocated. Out of the state. His throat worked. Do it quickly. The text swarmed. Chaotic. The plot changed again. Ethan with a gun is something else. He stopped it. Again. But is the love interest just gone now? Ethan, you're kind of pathetic. Days later, in a private hospital room, Ethan watched Kaylin sleep. The doctors said the 99% compatibility was a biological siren call. Kaylin's system, already cycling towards a rut, had been hijacked. He'd fought it, they said. That's why he'd collapsed. The mark was temporary. A moment later, and it would have been permanent. The text provided a running, cynical commentary. He's been out for days. Serves him right. Ethan messed with fate. Kalen resisted at first. But once he gets a taste of the real thing, too bad Ethan interfered. Ethan ignored the words. He just looked at the sleeping face, so peaceful now, so young. The phone vibrated. Silas. The office felt colder this time. Ethan walked in and sank into the chair opposite Silas without waiting for an invitation. He was tired, a deep weariness in his bones. Silas let the silence stretch, his gaze a physical weight. Finally, he spoke. "You have nothing to say for yourself?" Ethan looked at him, unblinking. "Ask whatever you want. The Omega. You had him removed." Silas's tone was dangerously quiet. "You went that far. I believe I warned you." Ethan felt a laugh bubble up, cold and sharp. "Your son is in a hospital bed, and your first question is about the Omega?" "Ethan, it was a command." "What? Are you asking me what right I have? What position I think I hold?" Silas's lips curled into a cold smile. "Or is that what you're angling for? You seduced him. You removed his genetically perfect match. This is your revenge, isn't it? After all these years, you're still stuck in the past. Kalen is a rare alpha. His pairing would produce an unparalleled legacy. Nothing can be allowed to interfere." Ethan listened, feeling nothing. He'd expected this. Silas cared about the bloodline, the asset, not the boy. "So?" Ethan asked flatly. "Why am I here?" Silas leaned forward, his alpha presence filling the room. "You've done enough for the Northside Division. You deserve a change. We have a vacancy in the Jersey City operation. It needs a firm hand." Jersey City. A grimy, chaotic outpost. Low level. The last man sent to clean it up had been found floating in the Hudson. Ethan said nothing. "You refuse?" Silas raised an eyebrow. Ethan met his gaze. "You're that insecure? You think if I stay, he'll choose me over some destined bond?" Silas's face darkened. "Don't flatter yourself. Remember how he ended up in the hospital. Are you confident enough to force this issue? To break with me completely?" Ethan looked at the familiar, hated face. He thought of Kalen in the club, lost to a biological imperative. The world didn't bend to one's will. Things changed. People changed. "You know," Ethan said, his voice utterly devoid of inflection, "I've always listened to you." 6 months later, in a shadowed alley behind a Jersey City bar, the air smelled of stale beer and wet brick. Ethan ground his heel into the shoulder of the man kneeling before him. The fine wool of his suit trousers stretched taut. He took a drag from his cigarette, the ember glowing in the gloom, then calmly pressed it into the man's forehead. A stifled scream. Ethan drew his gun, the metal cold against the sweating skin. "Talk, or the next thing you eat is lead." The man broke, babbling. Ethan gestured, and his men hauled the informant away. He stayed in the alley, leaning against the damp wall, lighting another cigarette. His phone vibrated. A message from Leo. For 6 months, the big man had begged to come with him. Ethan had refused. "Stay," he'd said. "It's better for you there." Since then, the messages were constant. The latest one read, "Still no sign of Kalen." Ethan exhaled a plume of smoke, his grip on the phone tightening. A week ago, Leo had reported that Kalen, under what was essentially house arrest by Silas, had vanished. The organization had turned the city upside down. Nothing. A week. Nowhere to be found. He dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his shoe, turning to head back to his rented loft. He took one step, and then he knew exactly where the missing person had gone. But before he saw him, the text returned, brighter, more urgent than ever. He actually came. He tracked him to Jersey. The kid suffered. Didn't touch a cent of his trust fund. Hitchhiked, worked cash jobs. That's nothing compared to what he did to his own gland. Who knew he loved him that much? He was jealous before, thought Ethan saw his father in him. Silas told him Ethan requested the transfer. Kaylin thought it was because he was tainted. Then, the night Silas announced that Leo would be Omega would be Kaylin's match, Leo tracked Kaylin down. The idiot told him everything. About Silas. About the past. Kaylin finally understood. Ethan didn't want a replacement. He wanted possession. Kaylin confronted Silas. Got locked down. Silas brought the Omega around, tried everything. Kaylin refused. He'd rather destroy the gland they prized so much. He starved himself. Then he ran. Ethan stood frozen, the words searing into him. His heart hammered against his ribs. The text floated closer, and then, from around the corner of the alley, stepped a figure. He was thinner, dressed in clothes that were worn and dirty. His hair was longer, but his eyes, when they found Ethan, were the same. They filled instantly, spilling over. Ethan. Ethan couldn't speak. He could only stare, his throat tight. Ethan. Kaylin stood under a flickering neon sign that painted him in garish light, tears cutting tracks through the grime on his cheeks. Then he was running, crossing the distance, crashing into Ethan with enough force to drive the air from his lungs. His arms locked around him, a vice of desperation. "Don't leave me again," he sobbed into Ethan's shoulder, his whole body shaking. "Please don't leave me." Slowly, achingly, Ethan raised his arms and wrapped them around the trembling form. He felt like a stray, something abandoned and half-wild, something that had fought its way home. Ethan took him to the loft. He pushed him toward the bathroom, then went to the kitchen. He was boiling water for pasta when Kaylin emerged, skin flushed from the shower, wearing nothing at all. Ethan stared. "Your clothes." He was cut off as Kaylin crossed the room and kissed him. It was a kiss of starvation, of absolute certainty. He walked Ethan backward into the bedroom, tumbling them both onto the bed, his hands everywhere. "Wait," Ethan gasped, managing to push him back a few inches. "So eager?" Kaylin caught his hand, brought Ethan's fingers to the side of his own neck. There, where the gland should have been prominent, was only smooth, closed scar tissue. Ethan's breath hitched. Kaylin's gaze was unwavering, fervent. "No more destined Omegas. Just you. I want you. Now." He kissed Ethan's jaw, his throat, looking up with eyes full of devotion and need. "Don't you want to claim me, too?" Something deep inside Ethan, a hollow space he'd carried for years, clicked shut, filled to overflowing. He woke to a familiar, intimate pressure. He opened his eyes to find Kaylin watching him, a soft, unguarded expression on his sleeping face. Ethan's arm was draped over his waist, a leg hooked over his. A hot flush crept up Ethan's neck. He tried to move, to extricate himself quietly, but the movement only intensified the sensation. He sucked in a breath, preparing to shove Kaylin away, when an arm like steel banded around his waist, hauling him back flush against a warm, solid body. Kaylin nuzzled into his neck, his voice a sleepy, satisfied rasp. "Going somewhere?" Ethan elbowed him, though without real force. "Are you insane? Let go." Kaylin just laughed, a low, happy sound, and held him tighter. "No. Insane boy." The phone on the nightstand rang. Silas. Ethan stared at it. Before he could decide, Kaylin's hand shot out, snatched the phone, and swiped to answer, putting it on speaker. Silas's voice erupted, furious and frayed. "Ethan, is he there? He has to be with you. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? You did this to him. You turned him into this. You've been manipulating him from the start. It has to be you." Kaylin ended the call. The sudden silence was profound. Ethan opened his mouth, but Kaylin spoke first. "Ethan." He was smiling, a brilliant, unshadowed smile. "I love you." Ethan's heart stuttered. "I love you," Kaylin repeated, each word a vow. "I'm in love with you. Only you. I am yours. Completely." He pressed a kiss to Ethan's shoulder. "Isn't that enough?" He looked at Ethan, his eyes clear, holding nothing back. The rest of it, the others, let's just forget it. Okay. Ethan looked at this young man, this creature of passion and stubborn will, born from the person he hated most, yet offering a devotion so absolute it was terrifying. Silas could rage. The world could spin. It didn't matter. Kalen wanted him. That was the only thing that had ever mattered. He smiled, a real one this time, and nodded. As for whether he had manipulated events, whether he had laid a trap with years of careful neglect and sharper moments of attention, did it truly matter? The boy was here. He was his. And he would always only be his.